You're listening to New Mommy at 40 podcast. My name is Victoria Latour Dunker, and I'm your host. Welcome to our community. It's a non-judgmental, safe, honest space for mature people who are entering parenthood. We are almost at the end of season 1, so if you're new here, welcome. And if you're coming back, thank you so much for making this community what it is today. Please take a second and follow, subscribe wherever you're listening to this right now. All right, thanks everybody for being here, and let's get into it. Hit it! It didn't happen in my 20s. Who cares? Now I've got all this fancy wisdom to share. Hey, I've got this baby, you're getting the best of me, 'cause I'm a new mommy at 40. Wait, don't put that in your hair. Oh, great. Today on New Mommy at 40, we're gonna chat with a daddy. He's a talented actor and the dynamic lead singer guitarist of rock band Electric Black Horse. You're listening to my favorite song right now, Stone Fox. Michael Pate sits with us to share his experience of becoming a new father at the age of 42. Aside from being one of the most beautiful friends in my orbit, he's a great dad and husband to his family, and I can't wait for you to see how authentic he is. The best gift he's giving to his daughter is bringing all of who he is to the table. Michael Pate.
Hey.
I am so happy that I can use this podcast as an excuse to get in touch with you.
I know. This is the first time I've seen you actually speaking in years.
I know. It's been a long time. I don't think I've seen you since after Hurricane Sandy in person.
Yeah.
It's been years. How you doing?
I'm doing good. You haven't aged. You look exactly the same.
No, see, I was about to say for you too. I mean, I was just looking at you while you were setting up, and I was just like, how does this man not age at all?
That's the secret to baldness. Nobody knows how old you are. Is that
what it is?
Yeah. If I had hair...
So if you get bald young, like, because you did, like, you've been bald for a long time.
Yes. And if I let the hair that I have that will grow back in that you could see, you'd be like, is this guy like 85 years old? Because it's all white and it only comes around, here. Everything here stopped coming in years and years and years ago.
No, it's your amazing skin.
Well,
You're glowing, my friend.
I try. Well, when we have kids, they keep us young.
Yes. Well, you've always had a young spirit anyway, a very youthful spirit. But it's funny that you say that, because I was wondering when I was getting ready to talk to you, and, usually with the guests, I send like an outline so we can have an idea of what we're talking about. And I was writing it, and I was wondering when did you ever see yourself as a possible dad? Because if anyone who's listening to this, who knows you, you are just such a warm, wonderful spirit of a person. You have always been. So it didn't surprise me when you had a kid, and I thought, what a lucky kid. Like, this kid's so lucky to have him as a dad, because I could see it. But when did you see yourself as a dad?
Well, thank you for saying all those really nice things. Gosh, I don't even know how to come back to that. But I will put it this way. I never said I'm never going to have kids, but it was just but honestly, it was something that I didn't put a lot of thought into, because if it happened either way, I wasn't going to be upset about it. But it helps to like children, and I've always loved kids. Kids are great. Kids are hysterical and they're fun. But until I had my own kid, they were somebody else's kids. And I'm the baby of my family, and I didn't have a lot of little cousins to pal around with. I was never like the kid. I know so many people like, I was taking care of my cousins. I was changing their diapers when I was like 9. I didn't have that experience at all. I've come from a very small family. So I didn't have little cousins till I was probably like almost like 20.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And they lived like on the West Coast, so I didn't really get to see them a lot. But when I did, I really loved it, because they were kids and I like kids. And then B was like, they were my relatives. They were like, my flesh and blood. So that was nice. But no, I never planned having kids. Like, when you're young, in school, like, it seems like it's more like I don't know if it's like this now, but then it was like little girls were like, when I get married, when I do this. It wasn't the boys were never like, when I get married. It was boys were like, oh, when I get older, I'm going to do this and that. It wasn't about, I'm going to have a family. But I think it came to the point, well, I knew when I met my wife, it was like, that was going to be part of the equation. And I started to get excited about it.
Now, was that because
I was afraid.
That's something that she told you that she wanted up front, or in being with her, you're like, oh, I can see this?
Yeah, and being with her, and also like we came about it, very early on in our relationship. Like it just comes up in conversation very innocently and very naturally. Like, is that something that you would want, or it's like, how do you feel about kids? And we were just kind of very, very much on the same page. Whereas she loves kids, she's very good with kids, and she knew that from a young age because she was the kind of person that had that experience growing up. She came from an Indian family with lots of cousins, and she was, she's like, I had cousins take care of me when I was like 2-3 years old, and then when I got older, I took care of the younger cousins, and I loved it, and people always wanted me to babysit, and that was kind of like said to me like, yeah, we're on the same page with this. So it was very much a planned thing when we decided to become parents. We were like, we're going to do this, and we're going to do this now, and let's start now, and let's have a window that we want to work with, and it was more, not so much her, but more, not even, how can I say it? I'm older than her by 6 years, but it really doesn't matter for men. There's men out there like men can have kids, have kids, like help people have kids until whatever age.
Oh, yeah.
But women kind of have a clock, and there's certain comes medical factors and like safety factors come into that thing. So when my kid was born, I was 42.
Okay.
And my wife was 35.
Yeah, and still, that's still risky time for her too. She's right at the beginning of that, right?
Yeah. And we'd been married for 6 years already, so it was kind of like, in retrospect, I'm like, maybe we took a little too much time, but whatever,
Oh, I forgot that. That's right. So you were married for. It just seemed like in my head, it seemed like baby came right after. But so you had 6 years to really just enjoy each other. What did you do in those 6 years?
We traveled a lot.
Yeah.
We just traveled and didn't think about the future. Yeah, we're living life and having a lot of fun. Getting to know each other better and doing whatever we wanted to do. We lived together, we had our own place, and the world was kind of like open for us, as when I was working at the airline anyway. And then it was like, we're like, wow, 6 years went by, because it went by real fast.
Yeah.
And like, if we're going to do this, we better get going. We better, get on it now. And, luckily for us, it took like a little bit of help, but we got there pretty fast. We did.
And when you mean by help, what do you mean?
My wife has like hypothyroidism.
Okay. And
that was kind of like giving her a problem with her eggs in some way. And I feel like a jerk for not knowing the exact thing, but she took, I think it was metformin.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I believe,
yeah. I understand that.
To help her out. So whatever metformin helps out with, she started taking that for about 2 months, and we got pregnant pretty fast.
Yeah, metformin.
Once she started taking that.
Yeah, metformin is one of those medications that it's actually like for diabetes or patients with diabetic patients, but it's also been found to help people with infertility issues, especially if there's like a hyperthyroidism, polycystic ovarian syndrome, endometriosis. For some reason, there's an aspect of that medication that helps women get pregnant. So.
And you just rang a bell. Also, polycystic ovaries.
I thought
that
maybe that's what it was, because I have polycystic ovarian syndrome. So
okay.
But ironically, I did not need metformin to have my first one.
Okay.
I didn't have a plan with my OBs or anything to think about what if you want to get pregnant. I just didn't think it was going to happen, and then boom, I met my husband. We had a miscarriage, and then we had my baby. So
okay.
Yeah.
So how old were you when you had your first one?
I was 41.
41. Wow.
41. So she's going to be.
It's just more. It's more common.
Yeah.
It's these days. I think it's more common. It's not like so. Yeah, there are the risks are there, but it's more like people just have a lot of their life to live first before they can make a decision like that to start a family, because it's it's a pretty major decision.
Let me say this about you. You are a total Renaissance man. You know that phrase, jacks of all trades, master of none. You actually happen to master quite a bit in all that you do.
I'm passionate, but I always tell people like I know a little bit about a lot of things, and that's kind of like where I leave it.
Michael's an actor. He is a rock star of Electric Black Horse, which is, has a great following. It's since 2011, I think you've had.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. Actually, it's been 10 years now.
10 years, rocking on.
10 years on and off.
On and off. We met while you were working for an airline. You were flying at the same time. Mm-hmm. Did I leave anything out of what you do?
No, not really. Not really. And any kind of other work I've done in between is just to support those things.
Right.
And that's really it.
So with that, I'm wondering, did you ever, because a lot of time when and why I wanted to have a male perspective on parenthood is when you are a woman, on top of the societal expectations of you being able to manage all those things, there are some aspects that you feel like in your life that you have to give up sometimes, or when it comes to having kids and a family, or even if you don't give them up, where they're put on pause for quite a few years, and then you're like, that's a part of me that I want back. Did you ever feel like some pressure of how you would be able to maintain those aspects that make you Michael Pate, that those things are who you integral to who you are in your soul? Did that ever, was there ever a conflict?
Not a conflict, but it definitely was something that passes through my mind every now and then. And even before I was married, I thought, like, if I get married, how is this going to change me? Is it going to change me for the, am I going to just not do what I do anymore?
Right.
I mean, is it, that was the fear but obviously it didn't deter me, because we became married, and we didn't really, there wasn't like, we were engaged for like 10 years or anything like that. We were engaged for like a year and a half. That was long enough. And, when with the right person,
mm-hmm.
and they're just going to kind of like push whoever that person was, or what makes you happy, and support that, and not ask you to make these monumental changes that don't make you who you are anymore. But having a child, to me, I knew where I stood on, in my marriage, but I'm like, wow, as a child, I'm like, I know a child's going to need time. A child's going to need presence, and and it's not that I wasn't willing.
Your presence.
My presence. Right. Yeah. And, because, luckily it wasn't like, my wife and I weren't like, well, you're going to be the dad, the provider, and I'm going to be the mom, stay home. It was just more going to be like, we're going to keep doing what we're doing and just be parents, and not make some, very dramatic decision on roles. It's just going to be like, we're going to be her parents, and that's going to be it, and we're going to make it work. So, but I mean, I would say the only thing I've lost as a parent is sleep. That's really about it. The other changes you just kind of roll with, and they're not that dramatic, they really aren't. Again, like, it's like, we haven't gotten into this yet, but it's like, people give you all kinds of advice when you're going to become a parent, but then everything just happens to you not the way anybody tells you, and that's it, and you roll with it and you learn.
Yeah, I like what you said, because I feel, for me, I think I also was at this place where I felt like I should have arrived at who I was and what I was going to be doing with my life, Right. Because, when you're like 20, 40 seems like really old, and you have these ideas of what 20, by the time 40 comes, I'm sure I'll be like really settled on who I am. And in one sense, I was settled into who I am as a person. I know that I want to do good in the world. I know that I was comfortable in my skin. But in terms of direction of what happens now, like I found myself leaving that job that we knew. I retired from the airline. And then I was like, now what? Because I too was an actor for many years. And then I thought, can I go back to that? And I remember thinking, but with this kid now, I should be in a place in this age where I can spend more time with her, because I would feel established. Right. But I didn't quite feel as established as I had hoped I would be when I got to 41, 42. So I wondered, when I was thinking of you, it felt like I know you acted prior to the arrival of your child, but it feels like something happened. It seemed from the outside, it looked like it even maybe opened you up to going to feeling like, why not? Why not go for it? Like, I have this amazing kid. I want her to see me do all that's important to me, and that she meets an authentic me. It just felt like you even doubled down on your authenticity.
Yeah,
from
and
being
that's
a dad.
Kind of it's something my wife and I talk about a lot, because I've always I've never questioned the things that I've wanted as far as for myself and where I saw myself. It was just a matter of getting there and being on the journey. And what was important to me was that I want my kid to know exactly who I am, you know, for better or for worse, you know. And yeah, I go through, you know, as an arty person, and you know this, you go through a lot. It's always a lot. It all comes down to who you are. You're always questioning things, and you're always like challenging yourself, and you criticize yourself, and you come down on yourself. But you also got to, like, you know, champion yourself too, and, you know, buck up a little bit. And I'm always kind of all over the place with that. And but I wanted my kid to see that and what that's like, and that, you know, never giving up on your dreams, because it's all, I mean, to me, it's like, I don't know if I'm ever going to get to where I'm supposed to be going. And I don't want that to be the goal. I don't want to be like, I want to know what I'm supposed to be doing. I just want to always be true to who I am, and not go down the path I'm supposed to go down just because, aren't I supposed to be being a parent? Aren't I supposed to be being a good parent? Good parents do A, B, C, and not, you know, these things. And like, doesn't it seem selfish to be, you know, doing, especially acting and music and being on a stage, is like it's not supposed to be all about you. It's supposed to be about your kid. I'm like, I understand. And I go, and that's not what I'm doing. I go, what I'm trying to do is just be as authentic as I can. So whether things come to fruition or not, my kid can be like, you know what, my father was always 100% my father. He never tried to sidestep it. He was, you know, if he failed or he succeeded, he always was genuine in that way.
Yeah.
And that's that. And to me, that way a kid can see what failure looks like, or like, you know, temporary failure, just a stumbling block, and you keep going and you keep moving.
I was going to say,
I mean?
and that's not even about failure. I think you're right. I think it's about the journey of the ups and the downs, and going with the flow, and you know, when you reach an obstacle, how to work through it. I think that is such an important lesson in life that you're teaching her too. And the authenticity part that I'm, you know, and I, like we said earlier, I haven't spoken to you in a long time, and it's so weird how you can like peek in on people's lives on Facebook. And I know you go in and out of social media, but it is something that has come through to me, is that you are even more so, and you've always been your authentic self, but I think something happened after being a parent, it seemed, where you're like, she's going to get to know all of me. There's not a part of me that I'm going to hide or change just because I'm a dad now. I'm even going to go even more for it. That's what it seemed like to me. So it seems that that's what you're saying.
That's how it feels these days. Yeah. That's how it feels these days. And and honestly, I'm doing more than I ever have, because I'm throwing myself more into it, because it's almost like I don't have, honestly, the distractions of being single or not having a child. There's a lot of focus around, actually. It's not so loosey-goosey. Now it's more like, got to do this, and, you know, make sure you check off all the boxes, and make sure you know, throwing against the wall as much as possible, especially like in the arts. And I'm like, I just make sure I don't leave any stones unturned. And I've kind of gone on to do like new things that I never thought I would do. And, you know, she sees it all, and it's great. And she's 6 now. She's almost 7. And like, we talk about this stuff. It's like, she's like, what are you doing? And I'll sit there and explain to her what I'm doing. She thinks everything's funny first. And then she's like, oh, that is who you are. She'll see an old picture of me, and she'll be like, you know, I don't want her to be like, but that used to be my dad. Or like, I want her to be like, this is my dad. Look, yeah, he gets up there with makeup on and like, you know, shakes around with a guitar. It's like, yeah, he does it now. It's like, not like my old dad.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, she always tells me, you're not old, daddy. You're not old. You're a kid like me. And like, that's just the greatest thing my kid ever said to me.
Aww.
You know what I mean?
Now, do you feel like, how do you feel age has played into you focusing? Because I know we don't feel old.
Yeah.
But does that play a role into how you set your priorities and your focus
I guess because I try, like you said, it's just, we try not to, we don't feel a certain way, you know, we know we're an age, I just try not to go there with that. I just try to be like, you know, the moment is still the same from the way I felt about it, you know, 25 years ago till right now. And, but just with age comes the experience and the wisdom of living life and having real things happen to you. Probably the only thing that I took more note of as far as being a parent and being my age as a parent was like, pay a little more closer attention to your health and do whatever you can to remain as healthy as possible. So I can max out my time with my kid. And I hate to think of it that way. I hate to be like, so like morbid, but you know, I was at the dentist once, and he's like, I think my daughter was like 2 years old. My dentist was a real character. He was a real funny guy. Like a hippie. He was really funny. He's like, hey, he's like, you know, he had like 3 sons or something. They're all best friends and they go everywhere together and they're all in their 20s and 30s. And he's like, how many kids you got? You have 1, right? I'm like, yeah. He's like, you should have another one. I'm like, okay. I'm like, any reason why you said that to me? He's like, no, you're a good guy. And like, you seem like a lot of fun, you know, but I don't mean to be morbid or anything, but you know, that way, if something happens to the one kid, you got another kid. And I'm like, all right. What about if something happens to me?
Right. That's not where I thought he was going with that at all.
Yeah. I was like, okay, you know, and the funny thing is one of my best friends that I've known for my whole life almost, he's got 2 daughters. And I was telling him this story. I'm like, the dentist like, have another kid. So, you know, they have each other or maybe, or like, at least I won't feel so bad if I lose one. He's like, listen. He's like, you do what feels right. He goes, because if you have another kid, there's no guarantee they're even going to like each other or talk to each other in 20 years. He's like, there's no guarantee. He goes, do what feels right to you. Don't listen to the dentist. He sounds like a kook. I'm like, all right, yeah, you know, he is a bit of a kook, but he meant well. He didn't mean to like be mean or offend me or anything, but
yeah, no,
I just thought it was like hilarious.
They don't mean to be rude. I mean, because I've had this conversation with a couple of people around this age, and there's always someone throwing out like, hurry up and all that stuff. So it was nice. I mean, not nice, but ironically, I haven't heard a male get that yet, you know, because, and of all people, your dentist saying that. That's funny that he said that to you.
It had the kind of the reverse effect of me. What I was thinking was like, geez, like what if something happens to me? I'm like, I don't want to leave her alone by herself, or, you know, what if something happens to her mom and I, or whatever, you know, it's like, that's the only thing that like in my head, I was like, maybe I should think about it. I don't know, you know. I don't know.
No, it's had me plan. Like, I remember, I think she was 14 months and I got, you know, you get these things in the mail about life insurance and like AAA is always sending you stuff. And I usually just throw it away. And then I looked at her, I looked at the mail, I looked at her and I thought, oh yeah, I guess I probably should look into that. Cause I'm, you know, like, for the first time, I started thinking, okay, should I write a will? Should I, you know, what am I thinking? But it was also around the time my mom was sick too at the time. So it put a lot of perspective. And that for me as an older parent, what I have already experienced is some of the people that I care about and love dearly are so much older now, and that they're not really going to get to know my kid and vice versa because of just time. So even though I'm not too concerned about my time and I really try to like keep myself healthy, like you were saying, so that I'm there for her, it's like losing my mom when I did. I thought, oh my gosh, she was 67. I thought I had so much time.
Yeah. And
so that made me go, okay, all right. So now what if it's me? What if I only have a certain amount of years, you know, 67? What if I go at 67? You know, what does that mean for my kid? And that really put me in a space of like preparing, looking at my 401k again and just kind of getting things in order. And I started to realize when I was with other parents that were younger in like play groups, every once in a while I'd zone out. I'm like, she's not thinking about that at all. She's like 23 and going, you know what I mean? Like, I'm like, whoa, my 401k and AAA, you know, I'm gonna for life insurance. And we are not on the same page at all. But for the most part, I think sometimes for me, it's looking at my village and wondering who in my village could possibly offer some safety to my kid if something should happen to me. So morbid. How did we get here, Mike?
I don't see. That's the thing. It's like, it's funny. It's funny. It's like, it's either you could think of it as morbid, or you could just think of it as being unbelievably practical. And you know what I mean? It's like, and you know, and we can get into a whole other podcast about death and what it means to people. But you know, like,
I know what it means to you, which is why I love like your whole philosophy on this, because you are about living your best life right now and spending the time and making the memories right now, because this is what you have. So make the most of it. Living truly carpe diem. You know, living in the moment. And
that's not to say that I'm not for making some kind of like, you know, looking ahead and planning things like, you know, like life insurance and things like this. That's all makes sense. Having a will totally makes sense. But again, it's more about how I want my kid to see me and how I want her to think of me, not as, you know, dad was my daddy and then he was somebody else outside the house, kind of like.
Right.
You know, no, I kind of just didn't want that. I kind of wanted to, because honestly, growing up, I didn't get a lot of support to be, you know, be your true self. It was never that. It was like, do this, go to school. No one really, you know, if I kind of wandered outside of the road a little bit, it was always like a very like hard pushback into like the straight and narrow. Whereas with her, I want her to just feel she's going to choose who she's going to be and how she's going to be. And that's really it as far as that goes. As far as her seeing me, I want her to see me, not like see the guy acting like a dad. See like,
and
you know,
who were your role models when it came to fatherhood? And how did you, when you were preparing to be a dad, did you have someone in mind that kind of gave you a framework of what that would look like for you?
You know, a little bit. You know, it's the relationship I had with my own father, very, very complicated, and he was not my model of fatherhood. And it's not like he wasn't a loving person or anything like that. It's just he just wasn't a good role model in that sense. And he was more like, you know, do as I say, not as I do type. And I learned a lot of lessons from him on what not to do. But growing up, I had a lot of great. Luckily, I had a lot of great male role models. You know, as far as like what fatherhood should be and could be, and how to speak to kids and how to treat children and how just to live life. But one that sticks out for me is my best friend's dad. He's a doctor. He was a doctor. He's retired now, and came from Colombia with like no money in his pockets and like made an unbelievable life. His son is like my brother. I'm like family to them, and I had him in my life like from about 10 years old. And I remember when I was married and we were thinking about having kids, he asked me, he's like, hey, you know, what do you think? You think maybe have kids? I'm like, yeah, I'm thinking about it. He's like, well, what are you thinking about? I'm like, I don't know. I'm just a little nervous. He's like, that's normal. I'm like, you know, and I'm like, money. He's like, money. He's like, you don't need money to have kids. He's like, don't worry about it. He's like, they're little. They don't eat a lot. He's like, the clothes. He's like, just ask Fred's for clothes. We got tons of baby clothes. You can have them all. Don't worry about it. He's like, if you feel it, go for it. He's like, don't overthink it. You know, he's like, you're going to be great. You know, like I had a lot of really positive support from him, and he's just a wonderful person that I'm still lucky to have in my life. And he had 5 children, 4 boys and a girl, and like their house was always wild and chaotic, but very loving and very supportive. And like it was a safe place for me, for sure. You know,
I was wondering for you what the pregnancy was like from your perspective, unable to really fix anything.
Yeah.
You know, because I know a lot of times, you know, our partners, especially our male partners, want to fix things. And, you know, they see you in pain and they can't really feel what you're feeling, you know. So how was getting through pregnancy for you? What was that experience?
Honestly, I got to say it was very, very low maintenance. My wife is a champ, and you know, she's not one to complain about anything unless it's really bothering her. You know, any kind of like, especially with physical pain and the physical things you go through in a pregnancy. It was more like when it came down to the learning that she was going to have cesarean because my daughter wasn't turning. And she did this. They tried to do. I'm trying to remember what it's called. When you go to when the doctor tries to manually turn your child before the birth. Mm-hmm. And man, I don't think I could have handled it. I was having trouble just watching it happen because it was like you go from just cool and calm to like 2 seconds later you're drenched with sweat, red in the face, and like that was so hard to watch because it was so painful for her. And she went through it like twice, and kid still didn't want. Kid just kept going whoop, like right back to I think it was like the 9 o'clock position or something. I think she was like this way. And
she was really comfortable.
Yeah, and just didn't want to do it. And when it came down to the birth, doctor, everybody was amazing. And that was an amazing thing that I got to hold the baby first. I did skin to skin with my daughter first before my wife, and I always feel guilty about that. I'm like, she's such a great mom, and like she should have had that first experience, but I'm glad I was able to do it and be there. Because I know I've talked to a lot of like men who've like their wives have gone cesarean and like, I was in the other room and like they just told me when everything was right. I'm like, you weren't there? What do you mean you weren't there? Like that's what is this 1955? Like
yeah, right.
It's like we were like head to head. Like I was like, you all right now? The doctor's over here, like, everything's good over here. Okay, it was amazing. It was amazing. That was just I still like get like butterflies thinking about that day because it was so crazy. It was just like this is happening and like And when they handed her to me, it was unbelievable. I thought I was gonna faint. I was just like, she's like, Dad, we're right here. Okay, give me a kid. It was amazing. And after that, I'd probably say the thing like that was kind of like a tough thing to go through was like, my daughter also wasn't latching on, so my wife had a pump, and man, that was just like. Every night pumping and pumping and pumping and just like she's a champ, man. She's just she was amazing, and honestly these are things that are just minor bumps in the road in pregnancy. There's people that go through so much to have a child. Mm-hmm. So I'm always very much like, man, we were lucky. We were so lucky that it went so smoothly. We had to do these alternate things like a cesarean, she had a pump and do these things, but other than that it was easy. It was really easy.
Yeah. And what was your first night home like? Can you remember? You've got Renaissance man. You've been living 6 years, just the two of us, just chilling.
Yeah.
And then you bring this person home.
And
what
it
was that like?
It was just we never slept again. We just never slept again. Even when it was time to sleep, you got to sleep when the baby sleeps. Just never slept again. I was just always like waiting for the next thing to happen. Uh-oh, what do we do now? She okay? She fine? She good? She's good. She's good. You hear it? No, I don't hear it. She asleep? I don't know. Go look. In and out, in and out, in and out. It took months to really come down from that high alert thing. Even though there was nothing particularly like happening. Actually, 4 days home from, so my kid was home for 4 days. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, and because I was just, again, I was like on 10 high alert. I'm like, she's not sleeping enough. She seems like she's a little lethargic. And my wife was like, well, she's not eating. Do you think she's eating enough? And we had to bring her back to the hospital because she wasn't eating enough because she was like dehydrated. And they had to, get her fluids and get her kind of eating again. And my God, that was one of the toughest things. That is the toughest thing I got to say I went through being, with this kid because, God, she like, they're so helpless when they're that young. And then you get them in there and it's like, all right, we got to take some blood. And they pricked her in the foot and she starts crying. Like, I lost control. I was just crying like I was crying there right there with her. Just like it was just me and her. I'm holding her little tiny hand and the nurse is like, she's like, don't worry, Dad, it's gonna be okay. This is just, she's just dehydrated. She's not gonna remember this pain. I'm like, I'm just in my head. I'm just like, no, she's gonna like when she's 10, she's gonna be like, why'd you do this to me? And like, just her little weak little face, like, crying and like, God, I just bawled like a baby. Like I wanted to like kill everybody. Like stop touching my kid. Like I was like, it's going to be okay.
Because they're so helpless.
Totally.
They're so helpless and so little.
4 days old, little. I mean, just little 7-pound little bean, It was tough. That was tough.
How did you come up with her name?
Kasturi is her name, and her mom is born in India, as you know, northern India, in Delhi, and we didn't think of any names at all. And my wife was just like, hey, I know we haven't really gone down the road yet, and this is like 3 months before she was even born. She's like, what do you think of the name Kasturi? It was my dad's mother's name. I always thought that was a nice name, and I'm like, that's the name. That's the name. That's it. I go, that's the most beautiful name I've ever heard. I go, I've never even heard that name. I never read a name like that. I never heard a name like that. And I'm like, that's her name. She's like, really? You sure? You don't want to like throw it back and forth? It's like, because my mom had just passed away. She's like, you sure you don't want, my mom's name was Carolyn. You think Carolyn Kasturi? I'm like, no, Kasturi is her name. That's a beautiful name. I go, how about Kasturi Carolyn? We'll use my mom's name as the middle name. I go, wow, that was easy enough. And wow. I love my kid's name. I love it. Every time I say it, I'm like, I love this name. And then in Hindi, it means, I think the literal meaning is like musk of the female deer, like the scent that a female deer gives off. And that's kind of hard to explain to people sometimes. So I'm just like, it means like doe, like a female deer. Like, okay, great. And I loved it. I love her name. We call her Cassie most of the time. But in school, like, the teachers, call her Cassie. But I remember her kindergarten teacher was like, I want to call her Kasturi. Is that okay? I just love that name. It's just so beautiful. I'm like, yeah, cool.
It's a beautiful name. I figured there was a story behind it. What's the best lesson you think you've learned so far as a dad?
I'd have to say it's just it's a lot easier said than done to letting kids be who they're going to be. That's my credo, and I want, like, I would never, block this kid and, like, her not even her goals, just who she is and who they become, because in the time we grew up in like the 70s and 80s and stuff, and just back in those times, and like, people like derogatorily call it woke now, and I hate that. It's just more like, no, you're just not muscling your kids into who you want them to be, and that happens at such a young age that you don't even realize it. Like, even like, someone told me the other day, like, like, oh, like, she's so cute, you got a boyfriend? Don't say things like this. We thought that was very cute back then, because nobody knew, because nobody told you could just do whatever you wanted to do and be who you wanted to be. You had to like fall within very narrow parameters, and like, and sometimes I have to like, I had to check myself and be like, because of when I grew up and who raised me, you know what I mean?
Tell us about her.
Oh, wow.
What is she like?
She's, she reminds me of my mother. She's like, she's very funny, but, she can at this age, she's already very like, she's already getting very, not private, she wants like time alone to herself,
Oh, really?
It's kind of,
she wants privacy?
A little bit, yeah, a little bit. But she's a daddy's girl for sure. We look alike, we make the same faces. Like my wife all the time, she's like, she just makes your faces all day long. It's like she looks like you and she looks like your mom, and that's, it's, I feel bad sometimes because we'll go someplace and she doesn't look like Indian enough, for some people like, oh, she's half Indian. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, I don't know what to tell you, like, well, she looks just like you. But she's fun. She reads extremely well. My wife's a voracious reader, and she's always read to her. So she's big into reading, which makes me really happy because, but like any kid, it's hard to get her off a device. If she's on a device, there's like strict rules about time and being on like an iPad or something like that. We try to keep most of that content like educational, like PBS Kids or something. But, she has a friend who's like a kind of like a neighbor, and the rules are very different in their house compared to the rules in our house. And sometimes that gets hard to navigate. And like, I just try to let her know she's not missing out on anything, kind of. But
was it hard for you to lay down the rules in terms of parenting style, being who you are?
Between my wife and I, no. Again, I'm lucky that we're very much like on the same page with things. Like, we will have like conflicting ideas, but never like, there's nothing that's dramatic where it's like she's an absolute yes and I'm an absolute no, or vice versa. and I also have my in-laws here, which adds like another dynamic, which is really nice, that she gets to interact with older people. I don't want to say old people, but no,
I'm gonna tell them you said old. I'm leaving that in.
Nobody speaks. No, it's nice that nobody really speaks to her like a child. Nobody ever has, really, and it reflects in her vocabulary and the way she kind of carries herself. It's strange to run into kids her age who like I could barely understand what they're saying. And I'm like, wow, boy, that's got to be tough. And I don't like to be the one like, oh, my kid's so advanced. Like I just kind of like to think she's a little normal, but yeah. I don't know.
No, it's good not. I've found it's much better not to do baby talk.
Yeah.
We've never had baby talk with Curry either. So right now she's just trying to decide what language she wants to, to think in, because she's getting French at home from me, and my husband tries to help out with, he'll say a word. Mama. And here's Curry, everyone. She's here. Mama. Yes, darling. Mama. Oui. Oui, c'est rouge. C'est quelle couleur? Rouge. Rouge.
Oh.
Oui. Non, ça c'est vert. So sometimes it's hard. I'm finding that vocabulary wise, I feel like at this age, she probably would be able to put a few more sentences, full sentences together. But it's there. Like she's having a conversation with you. I mean, the mannerisms and everything are like, I mean, she even does this, like, no, puts her hand like across her chest and as if she's like, what do you think this should be today? It's so funny to watch. It's awesome.
It's almost like the nature of French. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it is. Very, very français. Speaking of your mother, I know she meant a lot to you.
Yeah.
And as did mine. What do you feel the impact has been on you of her on your life as a parent, and also not having her here as you parent and seeing you as the dad?
Yeah, it was bittersweet. My mom passed away when my wife was, I would say, like 3 months pregnant. And, she knew that, a child was coming. And my mother had experienced being a grandmother before. My older brother has 2 children. And, but she was kind of excited for us, and a part of me was like, she was very ill. And a part of me was hoping like maybe this would buck her up just a little bit and give her a little more time. And unfortunately it did not. But my mom was my parent growing up, pretty much my sole parent. My father was in and out of my life a lot, growing up. And, I was, raised in I was raised by women primarily, my sister and my mom and my grandmother, my grandmother. Mm. And, the men in my family don't have a great track record, unfortunately, but my mom was, had to deal with a lot. She had a lot, on her plate, and a lot of times she didn't have a lot of time for me, but the time that she did have was, was very valuable. And, my mother never put a lot of, chains on me growing up. It's the way I am now, I think the reason is because of my mom. She kind of was like, at first, like she thought she had to have a lot of control over me because my father kind of put that seed in her head. And then when that kind of like when I got older, that kind of went away, and she kind of really embraced who I became, which was really nice. And, I see a lot of, like I said before, I see a lot of my mom and my daughter, and it's a nice thing to have. It really is. And my mom has a sister who's still living, who's wonderful too. She lives in California. And, she says the same thing. She's like, God, I just see so much of your mom in her face, and her, just like the little way she like rolls her eyes and little things. It's like she's all in there. And it's really, really nice. It's really nice.
Oh, yeah, there's a little piece of her in there.
Totally.
Which is great. Yeah. And I think she'd be very proud of you.
Thanks.
As a daddy.
I know what she,
I think so.
She's, I don't like to get like, spiritual or whatever, but like not too long ago, my wife was filming my daughter and I. We have a djembe instrument at home. Do you know what a djembe is?
Mm-hmm.
So we have
Explain
one.
it though for the
So
viewer.
a djembe is like a big like
Our
wood,
viewers,
it looks
the
like
listeners.
looks like a wooden box that you play rhythms on. And so I'm sitting there. My daughter and I happen to start playing it together. So my wife, just like innocently picks up the phone. Oh, this is cute, and she starts filming us. And there's a point where like we kind of like got into like a cool little rhythm, and we were just staring at each other. And she filmed it, and like maybe like 2 weeks later, she's like, I never watched this. She's like, and I watched it this morning, and I want you to see something. And I was like, okay. And it was just in our bedroom, which is where I am now. And it was at night when she filmed it. So there was no sun coming through the windows or anything like that. But our lights were on in the room. And she's like, watch really close. She's like, I don't know if you've ever seen this on film before, like orbs of light that move kind of abnormally. That's not just like a thing. This is not like really my wheelhouse.
I know it's not your shtick. It's not your thing. I know.
I'm not one to sit there and be like, oh, that's ridiculous. But it happened so deliberately and so oddly that it passed like between the two of us back and forth, and it was just one came like it came out of my neck, and now you just didn't notice them before. And then I was watching it again, and like you see, I just like right at the outset of this thing, I'm gonna have to show it to you. I'll email it to you.
Yeah.
And my wife was like, she's like, I was raised Hindu and stuff like that. She's like, but like, she's like, she's like, I really think that was your mom just floating around you, like happy that this was happening. And like, you and Cassie were having like an exchange. You kind of the two of you zoned out and were just like into the rhythms, you know what I mean? And it was really cool, and music is something, obviously I try to share with my kid and not push on my kid, I know a lot of people are like, oh, did you get her a guitar yet? Did you get her a drum set yet? Did you do this yet? I'm like, you know what? I like having things laying around that are accessible. I don't want to be like, all right, Tuesday at 3:00, we got guitar practice, because I did get her a guitar, but I want her to kind of gravitate towards it naturally. I don't want it to be like something we have to do, Right. So, but yeah.
And most likely just by seeing it around and you always being your authentic self, that's going to be enough of interest, for her, a motivation for her to give it a try.
Yeah.
Because the other possibilities that you beat it over the head, and she doesn't like music at all. She doesn't like it. She doesn't want to do it. So I think that's a great way to just introduce her to everything and just let her show you, like you said, who she is.
Because at an early age, I admittedly kind of beat her over the head with all the music that I love. You know what I mean? Just to get her started, And but now that she's like 6 or 7, she loves all the Disney music and all the Disney movie music, which sometimes, like, after hearing it for like 3 hours, I've had enough. But I never I try not to make it a point to be like, I don't like this or I don't like that. I just kind of sing along, and I'll be like, okay, can we listen to something Daddy likes now? Oh, okay, sure. And then we that's a good way to go about it. I think I try not to be detrimental and like, this stinks, because I do think a lot of stuff stinks, but I don't like to tell her that. You know what I mean? It's just more like,
right.
It's just, oh, this is your music or my music. It's just like, no, it's cool. We could listen to this in the car or like wherever we're going, And I just never thought I'd know so many Disney songs. It's insane.
Oh yeah, it's taken over our household. I remember thinking I wouldn't put, because we have an Alexa.
So do we.
Like I told you, she's trying to.
Bye bye.
Oh, she's saying bye bye. You know why? Because she heard me say Alexa. She's like, that's my cue. Here, go ahead. I know exactly what she's going to try to ask to hear that new musical out there right now, that Lin-Manuel Miranda.
Yeah.
If this ever makes it to him, my goodness, you know how to write a catchy tune that is just in everyone's ear forever. If I hear,
oh my God,
we don't talk about Bruno, I'm like,
no,
my goodness, no, right?
I dream about it. It's crazy.
I dream about it too, and I always end up on the rats along his back. That's where my dream starts. It starts at that part. I don't know why that one is so catchy. That one.
Oh my God. My purpose. All I hear in my head, my purpose. I'm like, stop.
Oh, the life of a parent. What do you think she loves about you the most?
I recently went to they had like a storytelling, like a bedtime story night at school where the kids, like after school at 6 o'clock, everybody shows up in PJs. And, you know, I gotta say, out of the only dads there were like me and like 2 other dads, and there were like hundreds of people there. It was all moms and like maybe just a handful of dads. And I remember at first, the reaction she had to it at first was kind of like, broke my heart a little bit. She was like, she's looking around, she sees all moms of the daughters, and she looks at me, she goes, Dad, can you do me a favor? Just, you sit over there a little bit more, like just push back. And I was like, what? I'm like, I want to hear the story too. I want to sit next to you. She's like, you know, she kind of gave me a little bit of like, you know, don't be near me right now. And I was like, what the? And I didn't move. I just kind of sat back a little. And in between stories, I was like, listen, I was like, you have to know that hurts my feelings a lot when you say that, because I came here to be with you tonight. And she was like, I'm sorry. I know, but she's looking around. She's like, it's just, you know, moms. I'm like, that's fine. That's okay. I'm like, we're all here. And then we started doing like the painting and activities together. And it was like, it never happened. Like she was just like, Dad, you know, throw it over, like, this is my dad, you know, like it was cool. But she also likes that she's like, you don't dress like a dad. She's like, you dress like you dress like a cool guy. I'm like, a cool guy. You dress like a rock guy, she says sometimes. It's very funny. But she likes that, like,
she's not wrong.
You know, she likes that I show up, you know what I mean? And like do stuff, you know, even though sometimes like she pulled that move like I just told you about. You know, it doesn't happen often, but once in a while she'll get a little self-conscious for some reason or another. Be like, I don't know, is this the right or the wrong thing to say? And like she'll always apologize. It's very cute. You know.
Oh. Well, she's not wrong. You are a cool dad. You are a cool guy. And it sounds like she knows exactly who you are.
Yeah.
And
that's the goal for me anyway.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
Happy early Father's Day.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And please wish a happy Father's Day to your husband as well.
Thank you. I will. I mean, what can I say? One of the coolest and nicest guys you've ever met. Am I right? Thank you, Mike, for sharing your perspective of being an older dad. And I love that your authenticity just shines through, and your kid's gonna be better for it. And I want to thank all of you for following and subscribing and listening to New Mommy at 40. What a season. I could not have done this without you, but I do need you to share it. Talk about it. Tell your friends. Tell your family. Tag us in your next post. Slide into those DMs. Let me know what you like, what you don't like, what you want to see next season. This is your community too. But I need you to help get the word out about New Mommy at 40. So follow us on Instagram, follow us on Facebook, share posts, share your favorite clips from episodes. All of it is appreciated and welcomed. So thank you again. See you next Monday. And please take care of yourself and each other. Bye.